Hi, this will continue our discussion of React Native, and if you followed the instructions from the last video, you should have React Native installed. I'm going to go to the terminal here, and let me make the text a little bigger there. Hopefully you can read this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project with React Native, okay? So the first thing I need to do is I need to change directory to my folder. And I have a folder called React Native, and so I'll just build the project in that folder. But first I need to go to document/React Native. And there we go. And then what I'll do is I'll build another project here. So I'll make a new directory. And you can just make these manually, from the interface here if you want. I'm just doing it in the command line. But I'll make a new directory. I'll call it example projects. I don't know, right? There we go, example projects. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new React Native project. Let me change the size of this window just to so I can make the text a little bit larger there. Okay, there we go, right? And so what we'll do is we'll say React Native init, and then we'll give our project a name. Now you have to be careful with the names. You can't use special characters in the names, no spaces, no dashes. I think you can use the underscore. I remember the naming being a little odd. It isn't very flexible. So I'll make a new project. I'll call it example1. How about that, right? And it's going to walk you through creating the project. It's going to download a bunch of files. This process can take a little while on the first time that you run it. After that, it should go much faster. So we'll just wait here while this loads. It'll just take a moment there. We're almost done. Gives me a warning, but I think we're okay. Now it's going to install React. These are all the dependencies, I guess. Installing Jest. Any moment now. Almost done. And there we go, right? So there's the whole thing, and we're all installed. So what did this do? Well, let's go to our folder here. So I'll go on the desktop there. And I'll look in my React Native folder. I'll find my example projects folder. Oh wait, I forgot to change directory into the example projects folder. You know what I'll do is I'll just grab it and drag it in there like that. There's my example project number 1, and you can see, or maybe it's a little hard to see there, but let me zoom in here. You can see a list of files, right? So I've got a couple files here that we need to pay attention to. There are 2 files here, index.android.js and index.ios.js. These are just JavaScript files, and you'll write your code in here. And these are the entry points for the Android app and the iOS app. Okay, so we can use the same code in both of these, or the code here can call on common code that we're going to use to build our app. We can also modify the code in each of these so that the Android or the iOS app builds differently, right? The node modules folder loads a bunch of JavaScript files that are all dependencies that are used by our project, and there's thousands of files in here. And if you're used to JavaScript, this is normal. If you're not used to JavaScript, this doesn't look normal. It looks a little weird. Though I guess if you build an app with Xcode, there's actually thousands of dependencies. You just don't see them, okay? The iOS folder and the Android folder contain the source code for building the native app. So this is the source code for your Android project, and in the iOS folder, this is the source code for your Xcode project. And you can see there's the Xcode project file there. So if you're used to Xcode, you could actually just double click on this and open that in Xcode and edit it. So if there's some situation you run into where you can't do everything in JavaScript with React Native, you can actually write native code in here or in here to support a feature that maybe you can't do with React Native, okay? And we can add more files to this whole folder here too, and we will, like as we work. So anyway, so we've got our files there. I'm going to zoom out a little bit there. And how are we going to build our project? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd to example projects / example1. Okay, so I should be in that folder now, and if I list, you'll see these are all the files that we were just looking at, Android.js or index Android and index iOS, right? And now what we'll do is we'll run our project from the command line. So what we'll do is we'll type in React native run, and I'm going to build for iOS this time, so I'll say run iOS. Okay, so I've navigated into the project folder that I created, and then I'm going to run, oops, and I realized I misspelled React, so that's not going to work. I'm going to do React native run iOS. And this build right here, this process will take a little while the first time you do it, and after that it'll load very quickly. So the first time through, it actually has to, compile everything and then actually build the source project, right? And then after that, I don't know what it does, but you can actually refresh it right from the iOS simulator very easily. So this first time through takes a moment. It'll also open up another terminal window where it runs the process that manages the window. So there's this window right here is now going to manage my project in the simulator. So this will take a moment. Any moment here. And when these run, they actually just run in, if you're familiar with Xcode, Xcode comes with a piece of software called the iOS Simulator, and iOS Simulator just lets you simulate the iPhone or other iOS device on your desktop. And React Native just pretty much uses the iOS Simulator to run its projects. So that's why one of the reasons that we need to have Xcode installed. It's transforming modules, almost done. Any moment now. Let's see, I'm actually going to click on the simulator. Oh, there we go. It's all done, right? So this is what the default project looks like. It's just a couple of lines of text in the middle of the screen with kind of a light blue background. So what does that mean? Well, let's go back to our project folder here called example1. And I'm going to open this up in Atom. You can edit this with any text editor that you like. So I'm going to open it up with Atom. And here we go. So these are all the same files we just looked at a moment ago. This is index.ios. So I'm going to look at this file. Let me zoom in on it. And you can see some code in here, and it's all written in JavaScript. Okay? So let's start at the very bottom of this file. So I'll scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's a line of code here that says app.appregistry.register component. And then it has two parameters, right? So the first parameter is a string that says the name of your project. This must match the name of your project. So you can't change this, right? It's got to match the name of our project. And I think because it's tied to the name of the Xcode project, right? So it has to kind of match that. And those files were created when we installed or initialized our new React project, okay? The second parameter here is a function. This is just written as a ES6, fat arrow function. And this returns a component, right? So this component, example1, is the component that was created up here. And you can see this is export default class. And we'll talk about components in a bit, but this is a component. And this component renders a bunch of JSX, right? So this JSX is what we're seeing on the screen here. And you can see it says view, So that's, like a box right here. And then inside we have a text that says welcome to React Native, and that's this. And then we have another text object that says edit index.ios.js, right? So that's this line right here. And then there's another text object here that says press Command R, blah, 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 right? And that's this line right here. Okay, so this is the text, and you could change this to whatever you want. I could say, hello world, right? And then now notice it says press Command R to reload. Hey, well, we can try that, right? If I click to make the simulator active and do Command R on the keyboard, it refreshes and I see hello world. So this is sort of the workflow with React Native. You're going to write code in your text files in JavaScript, and then you'll go to the simulator with the project running and do a Command R to refresh. Okay? If you do Command D, and it says here Command D or shake for dev menu. Okay, so I guess if you're simulating on a live device, you can just shake, but if I have it on the desktop, I can do Command D, and then I get a menu here, and this gives me a few more options, right? So this is the reload option, so it's like Command R. This debug JS remotely lets you debug your project from the console. Enable live reload. I think that reloads this every time you save a file, and then there's a few other options here, right? I just pretty much use the first two. So, we can turn this on. If you use the debug JS remotely, this is pretty useful because it gives you a console that you can log messages to. It uses Chrome and sends the messages to Chrome. This actually slows down your React project a little bit. So if you find your React project is running a little bit sluggish, I notice if I have the console on and I close it, all of a sudden my project just speeds right up and starts, acting normal again. So anyway, here I just clicked on the option there for remote debugging, right? And it opened up Chrome, and then it's going to tell me like, hey, why don't you use Command Option J, or you can go to View, Developer, JavaScript Console. And then the console here is going to show us messages from our JavaScript code, right? So there's our JavaScript there. It's kind of telling me what's running. And if I go to back to Atom here, maybe when this render method is called on my component, I could say, console, dot log, running example 1, right? So I'll just put the message in there. And then maybe I'll do a Command R here. Let me pull up the console and I'll refresh it. And then you can see it says running example 1. Okay, so that's pretty much the workflow there. You're going to edit your files here in your JavaScript project. You're going to write your code in JavaScript. You're going to see it in the simulator here. And to refresh it, you'll do a Command R. If you want to log messages to the console for debugging, you can turn that on, Command D, turn on remote debugging. It will send messages to Chrome. So you'll open up Chrome and then you'll get the JavaScript console. So developer, JavaScript console, and then you can see the messages and you'll also get error messages here. Okay, so anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that's helpful, and we'll do some more React Native in the next video.